Welcome to another episode of Business Highlight, a show by the Boca Raton Tribune. In Business Highlight, we talk to local business professionals and highlight their companies or nonprofits to our viewers. I'm your host, Pedro, and before we get started, make sure to like us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. That way you will never miss a episode. It's just bocatribune.tv. So today we have the pleasure of speaking with Kaye, the President and Chief Strategist at Kaye Communications. Bonnie, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on.
No, of course. It's great to have you on the show. For those that might not know who you are, why don't you just start off by introducing yourself?
Sure. I am as you mentioned, the Chief Strategist and founder of Kaye Communications. We are a full-service public relations marketing company, and we help brands to grow and dominate.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been a resident of Boca Raton?
Well, actually, my residential life in Boca Raton is 3 years, but we have had our business life here for 25.
Wow.
We're celebrating our 25th anniversary. So we always joked around. We lived in Coral Springs because it was a great place for our kids. Mm-hmm. And we used to say that we live in Boca Raton, but we sleep in Coral Springs. So, so we finally made the move once the kids, were on their own. So
yeah, that makes sense. So, you're one of the owners, like you said, one of the founders of Kaye Communications. Tell us a little more about your company. When was it established and things like that?
Sure. We were established 25 years ago. It was a women-owned business. I was a working mom, and I was a vice president at a PR agency in Coral Gables. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you the amount of traffic I was stuck in at the time. The only phones you had in the car were those big bricks.
Wow.
You can imagine. And there wasn't internet. There was intranet. Ooh. So I would often work at home just like I do now, and then go back in and have it retyped. So it was a little different.
Right.
I was a working mom, and I just thought there was better use of my time than commuting for 2.5 hours a day. And I opened up the business. 6 months later, my husband, partner in life and business, joined me. And we've been rocking ever since. This May, we're celebrating 25 years.
Wow. So I think what I got out of that, 25 years ago, there was still traffic going from Coral Springs to Miami. So it's not a new phenomenon.
No. And, we moved further north. The kids were settled. And sometimes you make decisions based on your family. And
right.
That's number one to us. And so they were really entrenched in the community. Mm-hmm. In Coral Springs, but before that, even Jacaranda Lakes and Plantation. So we were the ones that commuted because, when they always say happy wife, happy life, yeah. We always say happy kids, happy parenthood. And so we were the ones that made all those sacrifices to commute a lot. And we loved it. It was great for the kids. We've got 2 adult children that are thriving, mm-hmm. And a grandson too. So we made the right decision, and awesome. We were able to be present with our kids when we needed to.
Yeah. So let's just know, for people that might be watching this and don't really understand, what is PR? Let's start with that. That's a simpler question.
Well, Pedro, that's a great question, because whenever we meet with a prospective client, we always say, when they say we need PR, my first question is, what are you looking for? Because it's not always PR. It's also, you want to find the right strategist to work with you that is not just working in a box or cookie cutter. Mm-hmm. You really need a strategist at the core, and that's what we are. We're known as brand masters. We're known as messaging pros, media relations drivers, crisis diffusers, and all those are important. But at the bottom line is about storytelling. It's not about, sometimes people will call and say, can you write a press release for me? I said, I can, but what do you want it to do? Yeah. It's not really about, you can report news and you can create news. And as you know, working at the Boca Tribune, the story, you want a different story than what another media company would have. And that's fair, So sometimes always we pair what the message is with with your audience, because if it doesn't work for your audience, you're not going to be able to use that. That's the strength in journalism. So just so you know, my background, I graduated from University of Florida, go Gators. We support FAU, so I'm an alligator officially. I was on the foundation board because it's our hometown university. And, my degree at the time was journalism because they had a major in public relations. They didn't have a degree.
Yeah.
And when they defined that degree and established it, they called me and said, do you want to switch? And I said, no, because you know what? As long as I think like a journalist, I will be successful in my market.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I'm a major in public relations with a minor in marketing, but I think that people need to look at PR differently than ever before. We've gone through a pandemic, and I think it's become more obvious that I'll have people call me and ask, we just had something, negative written in the press, and they'll think that they can hire someone to respond in 2 hours. And the reality is that's why we say we can do press releases, we can do podcasts, we can do ads and social media marketing, but it's got to be part of a campaign. So you'll find with most of our clients, they are retainer-based or project-based, because in 2 hours, you can't fix a problem that, but moving forward, we're hired because they realize the value of being ready. Until something happens, people don't know. And the other things I want to tell you, if I stuck with my PR 101 book, classroom book,
right,
it would be can you imagine all the changes that have happened? So we are, at Kaye Communications, we're used to pivoting. And in fact, it kind of excites us because, I wake up every morning with a new canvas, a new thought, and I get excited, and we're very passionate. We want a good fit with our client, because if it's not going to be successful for either. So we tell our clients, and this is how we're really different. We tell clients what they need to hear, not just what they want to. Yeah. I'm not going to, I don't have to have all the ideas. It can come from a think tank, right? But it's all how you execute it. We did a $100 burger for the old homestead, and it was right when the internet was starting, and the client wanted to do the most expensive burger. And I said, let me check on that. Right. And sure enough, he goes, what do you mean? And I said, well, there's a thing called the internet now, and we have to make sure that, if there's a more expensive burger, why? And sure enough, there was a casino in Las Vegas that would give a $2,500 burger. Okay, so but the reason is they put gold truffles on it. So I said, all we have to do is pivot and describe yours. So it was a $100 burger. It was the most charitable burger. We benefited the Make-A-Wish Foundation. It hit AP. We were everywhere. In fact, at the time, Steve Abrams was the mayor, and he did one of these, with the burger in his mouth, and people are calling him from Chicago that they had seen. So you want to be authentic. That's really important. That's a good story to share for you. But that's how we took a client's idea and made it authentic and valid. And it was everywhere. It was everywhere.
So, you talked about, what PR is, but why would you say to a company, why is it important for a company to have PR? Because I feel like sometimes people might not understand that.
Okay. So that's also a really good question. So people have to stop thinking that public relation is shaking hands. They have to understand that it is a science and it's an art. And it is not about, it's using your resources and your strategy wisely so you hit your markets. You don't want to waste impressions if they're not. We all know that when you're buying ads, pay-per-click, everybody's getting used to that, right? Yeah. So you go for a certain audience. I mean, if you have a women's product, don't spend your time marketing to men, right? So, or if you have a children's product, where are you most apt to get that 80-20 response, right? It's even, so you need someone to look at what your goals are and always start with objectives. People get lazy, objectives. But you know what? It helps you make decisions. So if you have a strong set of objectives, when somebody says, can you, promote this for me? Can you, support my charity? Can you do that? You go through that list and say, is it really meeting what you want to accomplish? If you can accomplish, if it hits one, then you look at whether it's worth the investment in money and time. But if you can hit 3 things at the same time, that's a trifecta, obviously, So I think that strategy is important. It's not about, I want to be in the news every day. We do content writing, but you have to write it in the way that media or a reader wants to read it. So we just did something for Boca Lago. It's 5 tips on how to make your micro wedding, because we're all going smaller,
Yeah.
with a macro focus, with a macro benefit. And so that, because micro weddings are trending now, they're not having 300 people.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to deal with what people are looking for now and that creative edge and what makes that service or product or venue different.
Mm-hmm.
So I also think a lot of people depend on their internal staff, and they get groupthink, and they don't realize that, of course, we have to have an e-blast. Do you know how much time that takes? And maybe it's not worth it. So, it may be that by bringing someone else in, it's actually exciting for a company and a think tank or C-suite, because it challenges them themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And, we always do it in a way that in the end, it's a group opportunity. It's
Right.
I have this idea, yours doesn't work. So wait a minute, let me take that hamburger idea. I like where you're going, but now let's see what we can do with it.
Mm-hmm.
We actually, just in that instance, we had 12 media attend. Okay. But it was AP, it was Getty Images came, it was the right 12 people. So that's the other thing when people say, oh, I want to have 1 million press. What, in the pandemic, people have not been leaving to cover stories.
Right.
Okay. So that's why the story is so important and the visuals are important. Every time I send you at the Boca Tribune an article, I'm going to go out of my way to get the best visuals, because that's what your readers want, and it draws them into the story. You can't be at every event, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes it's that photo that says it to the world. So it's not just writing content. It's not just writing a press release.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really, really important. The other thing is, there is a misconception that reporters will write exactly what you want to say. And we always say PR is what you pray for, and advertising is what you pay for.
Right.
So, so we tend a lot of times to dispel what perceptions are, and then we work with them even before we make a proposal to think out what we would do for a prospective client. I don't just say, okay, now you signed on the dotted line, now we're going to start, because I have to know it's going to work, that we're the best for that client.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that help?
No, yeah, it does for sure. So we're talking PR with Bonnie Kaye, the president and chief strategist of Kaye Communications. Help us out with a little bit. And you saw, like, you're in your title, you say you're a chief strategist. So what is some of the best ways to use a PR strategist?
Well, one thing is first of all, you have to find the right one, because anybody can call themselves a strategist. But if you look at their track record, you can see, we've represented Town Center. What I love is that we've represented a lot of Boca icons, from Royal Palm Place, that whole shift, that logo, when you're driving down the street, that's us. Downtown Boca, people may not remember it now, but 10 years ago, there were a lot of shuttered places. The city and the downtown redevelopment agency for the Bocas hired us to present a short-term and a long-term plan. We knew at that time that people were just driving by downtown Boca. They were going to Las Olas, or they were going to Atlantic Avenue. Right. Starting with the right objective, we had to start somewhere. So we said we want to be one of the 3 places that people want to go to. You can't be number 1 right away, right? So we started working. We created, even with your dad, Pedro, we brought actually the Brazilian beat here, right? Where we went down, Doug and we went down, and John and I, and we brought the consulate. We arranged for the consulate in Miami to bring their annual event or their annual celebration up to Boca. That was huge. We knew that there was a huge Brazilian population in the area. And so that was one where people all of a sudden, realized there's a Boca, even from Miami. It was great for press. It was great to hit markets. The funny thing is, we did the event, we did a reception first. And you sometimes, even with clients, you worry that, you know, it's going to be a success. So we're sitting inside the Historical Society with the reception, with the consulate general and everybody, and it was great. And all I kept thinking was, I hope there's a crowd out there. I hope we had 7,000 people on a first time event, and that was through, you know, working with the Brazilian, you know, media as well as, you know, downtown. But that put us on the map. Then we did the Boca. Meet me on the promenade, because we wanted people to know that the little area in front of the little park in front was something important. And we tied it in the same day as the walk for the Heart group. So you had, with the Heart group that does a regular walk, there were 15,000 people walking by this event, and you know they all came back.
Yeah.
But you know, or they got on their phones. Did you know something's happening? We worked with the Miami Dolphins, and we made it the away game location. So it's just, you have to work with those objectives, though, because there's so many neat things out there, but they could be shiny objects that will waste your business time and money.
Yeah.
And so we help you with that.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit earlier about being able to pivot. You know, you talked about things like that. So COVID-19 obviously was probably the biggest pivot anyone had ever had to deal with in the last year. How was Kaye Communications able to pivot in that way and create lemonades out of the lemons of 2020?
Well, we always take the temperature of audiences, because that's what's going to matter. You could buy 7 green shirts and think they're the best green shirts, and no one wants green. So it's really about the audience, right?
Yeah.
We worked with the Chamber of Commerce, Boca Raton Chamber of Commerce, and I did a webinar about that. And I was trying to educate, especially nonprofits, on what that landscape is going to be. But there were a lot of for-profit businesses in that. I was on with Michelle Balasari on her podcast. We did send out some e-blasts, but we were very smart in our e-blasts. So we wanted to reach. People were hurting. They didn't know where their paychecks were going to be. They didn't know where their how they were going to pay their staff. Okay?
Right.
The people in the audience, per se, for businesses were hurting too. And it was really scary. So what we wanted to do is deflect, kind of diffuse that anxiety that went with everything, right? And what we did was we actually reached out. We sent it to 400 of our relationships, okay? And we targeted accounting firms, attorneys, and some other financial specialists, and let them know that if any of their clients are hurting or they don't know which way to go, to consider referring us. Because we opened from being just retainer clients or big projects. We wanted to help businesses. So we changed our model for now so that we could help clients in their immediate need. We did not want them to make a mistake, because you know what? They were nervous enough, but to make a mistake would be devastatingly costly for them.
Yeah.
And so we look at our clients' dollars as our dollars, and their successes as ours. So it was really, can I tell you, out of a constant contact send of 400 people, we had a 70% open rate.
Wow.
That's huge. But but that's my point. The strategy was to go to people that could use our services to help their clients. It wasn't, we did an e-blast for general. You know, we sent it to a few, 1,000 people.
Yeah.
I can tell you, I rewrote that at least 10 times before I sent it, because every day I was ready to push the button, something would come out on the news and it would sound insensitive. So back to the drawing board. So it's all that strategy, and you want to be respectful what people are going through. And on the nonprofit, we represent Habitat for Humanity of South Palm Beach County. I'm sorry, that was the door. We also help them through their time and explain, having the videos, talking to those that, because those families were struggling before. They needed a house. They needed a safe house, a decent house for their family. Now they're all in a very crowded condition during a pandemic. So it's really telling those stories. I remember Broken Sound Club lit up the skies for the first responders, and that got a lot of coverage. But it was also how we told the story about that and actually how they came about. So
Right.
stories are important, and they could be sitting right on your table, and you don't even know that they're there, because that's not what you do. You make widgets.
Right.
You run a restaurant. But it's not just the idea, it's the execution, and that's how we're different. And that's the difference between the press release writers that everybody wants. And I got to tell you something else. I always chuckle when other practitioners might do, here's how you get free PR. It's really earned. It's really earned. And you might be fortunate that a reporter, here's another thing that we did. While they weren't clients of ours, if we heard good stories, we shared them with the media because they were looking for stories. They said, wow, thank you so much. And it wasn't about a client. It was, we've got to share a good story. Oceans 234 was a client in the past, and they opened a grocery store kind of situation.
Right.
I shared that with all the media. I said, Danielle, how can I help you? This is a brilliant idea. Do you mind if and I actually through, not Zoom, through Facebook Live, I actually had them set up the photo, because I said, no, you need a little bit more. The potatoes over here, you need that photo went everywhere because it showed what they did.
Yeah.
It showed their personal passion toward it. But I was doing it by phone, and they sent it to me, and I said, good to go. And it got picked up everywhere because it was a good story. And also clients have to be more open to knowing if someone says it's not a good story. Let's wait for a good one, or let's create one. So what happened was, we had a client once that was he did so many good deeds. And he would say, well, I need this to go out. And they would be 4 good deeds in 1 month. I said, you got to pick 2. I can't, they're going to look at you and like you're the devil, like, enough already. I've gotten enough. So what we did was, we came up with a program that said business helps community, community helps business. It's business builds community, community builds business. You know what? By we added up all the things that they do, how many hours, we put it in numerical form, and they won a PR News Award in Washington, D.C. Because by not doing anything different than they were doing, but how do you package that? How do you share that?
Yeah. And
so those are examples where a strategist really makes a difference, just like downtown Boca. The reason Lord & Taylor is there, the reason that Trader Joe's started looking at the area was because we worked with the CRA. Constance Scott was the CRA chair. We strategically worked with even tourism to make it a destination. So, that's what you got to do.
Yeah, so we've been talking a lot about what sets PR, like what's the difference between PR and PR strategists, and we kind of touched on this already. But if you had to think of maybe like 1 or 2 things, what would set your company apart from the others in town or even in the area?
Well, again, strategy and the ability to implement it. I'm going to make that 1. 2 is relationships. We have our 25 years, we are steeped in already established relationships. When people have to pivot from maybe doing something different now than what they were doing before the pandemic, it's a lot different because they don't have the relationships. Yeah. They might have been a good writer. They might have, worked for an ad agency, whatever it is. But I can just tell you, we're working on something for Tri-County Animal Rescue, and I had 6 weeks to turn this event around. You guys reported about it, and I appreciate it. And it was for a little known, it was for the medical fund that helps subsidize medical treatments, surgeries, et cetera, for cats and dogs. But it's only for those that are financially challenged right now, pet owners. We don't want them to surrender their animals. We don't, their medical issues to go from a treatable condition to crisis, right?
Right.
But in the world of pandemics, the last people will consider is about the animals. But the reality is, if a first responder is so busy and can't afford to deal with it. If someone lost their job and their dog needs, so that's what that's for. So what we did was, within a week, we already had all the sponsors because John and I called different people, but we matched the people with what would make sense. I didn't call someone that wouldn't be interested in the mission. So people know that about John and I, that we do the Mayor's Ball every year for the Rotary Club downtown Boca Raton that benefits 27 charities. So, but we know if it's not going to fit, we're not going to ask. And if somebody says it doesn't fit, we'll say, perfect. But, I wanted you to know about the opportunity. But we did that, and this whole event is going to take 6 weeks from start to finish. We had the invitations, we had the sponsors,
right.
We put out e-blasts. So, but again, it's the relationship. So that's an example of relationships. And I would say the other is integrity and honesty. I will ask a client, do we have use of that photo? I'll ask things that most people would never think about, but I want to make sure everything is positive, never a liability. So we work sometimes in crisis. We work with someone's attorney, and we decide who's the right spokesperson. It might be the attorney because they have all the information. Hold on a second. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? So
right. Yeah, for sure. I get it.
Yeah. So I apologize.
No, you're fine.
So anyway, but that's the other important thing. The other thing is sometimes in crisis, I just turned it off. Sometimes in crisis, it is most people say, oh, I don't want to comment, right? Yeah. But that's not really always the best answer because you can comment in a different way. So for instance, there was a situation with a hospital in another state, very small town. And I got a call from a reporter saying that I hear you fired an employee because she was in Iraq or overseas, and when she came back, you didn't hold the space. So originally the client didn't want to say anything. Like, I don't want to say anything. And I said, well, let me just write you something, and then you just tell me. And what I wrote is, it's not our policy to speak to any HR issues. However, we want the city of blank to know nothing's more important to us than the health, safety, and welfare of our patients. Now, when I talked to the reporter, I said, do you know what kind of hospital this is? It was a specialty hospital. Because no, I got a feature the next month. Yeah. The next week. She said to me, thank you for replying. I said, thank you for reaching out. And what I said to the client is, this person is wrapping herself in an American flag. You're not going to win in a small town in Texas. So you have to have some kind of comment. And the reality is, she wasn't fired because she didn't come back. That's why I said the health, welfare, and safety. Yeah. But that's, and then in this small town, you could have been blackballed. It could have been really bad. You have physicians who depend on you, and you're only referred by physicians. So the attorney or the counsel went, okay, go, because you have to say something, no comment is a really scary thing. Yeah.
So, 25 years almost, you said, in business. So what would you say has been one of your favorite moments at Kaye Communications? If you had to pick one, I'm sure there's like a million, but if you had to pick one.
There's like a hard one, but I will tell you what we feel really great about is the resurgence of downtown Boca. People today may not know the footprint that we had on it. If you look at the logo, it's us. If you, that was a short term and a long term. And I feel really good about that. So when I'm driving down, I know we had something to do with it. We also dealt with the reinvention of Royal Palm Place, when people remember that it was the Pink Plaza. And I remember when we said to Jim and Marta, you're going to have to paint it a different color, because people realize that you really are changing it. And, we have Meisner's statue. That was the only one, on the clock tower. It's the only statue. We went through and we said, there isn't a statue in Boca, of Meisner. And so that was our idea, and they commissioned someone. And so now, Meisner has an official place in Boca, and they wanted to be, their goal was that they want to be the southern part, known as the southern part of downtown Boca. And I think that did it. Yeah. But we also said you're going to have to embrace purple. So that's where when you see all the logos and things like that, and now it's March's favorite color. So we're all good. But I do want to tell you another thing that I really do want to tell you, because we represent a lot of iconic brands. But the Boca Raton Resort and Club, we have been with them off and on for about 15 years through 4 ownership changes.
Yeah.
And being part of that from our kids being in the brochures when they were, 4 and 8, to now seeing the transition. That's very, very exciting to me. And those relationships that we met through the Boca Resort really helped start the club. My first client before John joined me was actually someone's brother that worked at the Boca Resort. So I have to tell you, that is part of our family life. It's working through those transitions and introducing the new teams and doing the 75th anniversary party, which we turned around in 6 weeks. And it was everybody came out in pink, and those are exciting times.
Yeah, I bet. So Bonnie, as we wrap up, I ask this question of everyone, so you're not gonna be any different. If you had to give an advice to someone looking to get into the communications or PR world, what would that advice be?
Wow, it's such a different world, and we've been able to pivot. I think I would tell people to read, go to podcasts, get involved in your community now that things are opening up. The Boca Chamber is a great place to get to know people, meet new mentors. The world has changed, and I do think that people have forgotten a little bit. They've gotten into digital, and I think those that are just leaving college have to understand that the people connect is really important. I think that sometimes that gets lost now.
Oh yeah.
I find that people can, if I'm looking to hire someone, they treat social media for businesses like they do their own homepage. And you can't. It's very, very different. There's an integrity with it. I do think that the people thing is the most important. The ability for me to call and establish relationships makes all the difference in the world, and you have to start somewhere. Yeah. So if you're young and you're try to find the places where you can connect, even leads groups, with the chamber. A chamber can really help launch a career. I was on the board for 6 years, and, we were trustees for many, many years. And I can tell you, I even led the YAY group, which was the Young Entrepreneurs Academy, which your sister was in.
Yes.
Yes. So it's a good training ground, a good mentoring ground. Find a mentor. And I think that's the best thing, but don't forget the personal connection. Some people can't even talk on the phone. I've been with people that can be great writers, and they cannot have a conversation on the phone.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part. I think if anything, right, just the advice is don't forget that real life communication with people, one-on-one, face-to-face, is still important. Because
another thing, though, too, I don't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No, go for it.
But the other thing is, I'm maybe old school, but I'm the right school. Grammar is really important. So even if you get a Grammarly, whatever it is, find something or someone, a system, because I can tell you, if I got a resume and there was one typo, I'd have a problem. I'd have to look at the resume and see, maybe I can forgive it. But I've seen it where 3.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've had clients that actually want to hire someone and say, can you look at these resumes? And somebody said to me, boy, you're really tough. You can't even pick one. And I said, but there's 3 typos. What do you want me to say?
Yeah.
What do you want me to say? Listen, I can make typos, but before they get out, I'm hoping that proofreaders, I send it to people to proof. I don't, because you're so busy writing, you may not, you might write over something, you read over something. We all do it. But in journalism, it is really important.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
You have that first chance only have one chance at a first impression. And there are a lot of people in the job market now. So if you're just starting out and you're going into it, grammar, respect, showing people respect is really important. I don't see that. I think people think they came with the schooling and they're hot.
Yeah.
That'll bite them because instead of embracing it, I always, through all my years, I wanted to learn. I mean, you know, I went from a Miami firm, I'm a Miami native,
Mm-hmm.
to HBO and Time Warner for 5 years in the Northeast. And that's where we did our public-private partnerships. That's where, when I started the firm, I had to have that because
Mm-hmm.
that's what HBO did, and it was brilliant. And I didn't, that maybe that's why I'm really good at pivoting, because I had 14 states and every state was different. And maybe
Right.
that's where I learned the lesson that everybody's different, like
Yeah.
there's a market for everything. Like if we did the Simon Wiesenthal story, obviously it was to the Jewish community group. If we did Letters Home from Vietnam, it was the Vietnam veterans groups. If it was the Josephine Baker story, it was for the Coalition of 100 Black Women, so,
Mm-hmm.
it's not that I learned it there, but I honed it. And I knew
Right.
that was what made the difference, because to get the press, it was all about the story, right? It wasn't about being on the TV page. It was about being on the main page about this incredible feature, because it's paid TV. It was back when people said, buy TV, are you crazy?
Yeah.
So, I think if people could just soak up from people that know more,
Mm-hmm.
they will go a long way.
Yeah.
They will go a long way.
Well, that was great, Ronnie. Thank you so much. Really appreciate having you on the show, guys. We've been talking with Bonnie Kaye, the president and chief strategist of Kaye Communications. Bonnie, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on.
No problem. All right, guys. I think that's going to wrap up another episode of Business Highlight. Hope you found this episode informative. And if you did, just share it on your social medias, or give it a like in the bottom and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, check out us on YouTube at bocatribune.tv. And that'll wrap it up for this week. And I'll see you guys next week. Take care now.